You're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Christopher Kälin. Chris is a global authority on bid and proposal management. He is the founder and managing partner of CSK Management. He has worked with companies around the world to improve success rates, generating over $50 billion in business across many industries, including IT, telecom, defense, transportation, financial industries, event organization, gambling, and business outsourcing. He developed the BidMaster Framework with the storyline method for developing compelling proposals. Chris regularly presents at business development conferences and sales conventions around the globe and conducts live and virtual training programs on winning business with convincing proposals and bid management best practices. He was co-founder and chairman of the German-speaking APMP chapter, Association of Proposal Management Professionals, and regional director of Europe Africa. He is APMP certified at the professional level and is an APMP approved trainer. In 2013, he received the prestigious Fellows Award. He graduated with a degree in Business Administration and Information Technology from Zurich University. Welcome, Chris, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Chris, we love to hear about the beginnings of our guests. We're curious, where were you born? Where did you grow up? And where did you go to school?
Okay. Well, actually, I was born in the UK, close to London, but from a German mother and a Swiss father. And after just 1 year, we moved on to Germany. And after 2 years, we moved back to Switzerland. So I actually had to learn my English at school, which is a pity. But I'm the proud owner of a British passport.
Oh, interesting.
And well, the funny thing is I've got a Swiss passport, because my father is Swiss. I've got this British passport by birth, and I'm now in the process of applying for a German passport as well. So at the end, I will have 3 passports. I never thought of applying for the German passport because I thought, well, the British, which was an EU passport, and the Swiss passport is a good combination, but now I had to decide that I'll go for the German passport as well. So I basically grew up in Switzerland, close to Zurich, speaking German with my parents, and they now live on Cyprus. They have moved to the sun. And I grew up in a wonderful country with wonderful parents. So I really had an easy and cool youth, I must say. And I went here to school, I went here to university, had my first job here. So quite conventional, I must say, not really exciting.
So you studied business administration and information technology. Was your first job in that field?
No, my very first job was at Sony, actually, because I love all these, these gimmicks. And at that time, Sony was what today it probably is Apple. And it was really cool working for such a cool company that was the leader in the market for all these gadgets. Nevertheless, I quickly realized that I was dealing with a lot of cool products, but what I had to do in the area of product management was not really my thing. So I relatively quickly moved on to Arthur D. Little, a management consultancy, where I was doing a lot of telecom stuff, and that was maybe from the content itself, it was less interesting, but it was much more interesting in terms of what kind of people you met, how international it was, and what we actually did. It was a hard job, but it was certainly one of the most exciting jobs I can imagine.
Oh, wow. And so was it that job or a different one that brought you into the proposal field?
That was this job, yes, actually, in 90, it must have been 200 years. 1997, actually, yes.
Wow.
I accidentally was put into the position of bid manager for a multi-billion-dollar mobile license bid, which is a beauty at that time they were beauty contests. I mean, later on they had these auctions, these silly auctions. And at that time, when companies applied for GSM licenses, so frequency bids. These were pure beauty contests. And beauty contests even without a price, because you didn't have to pay for something. You were just applying for something, mobile licenses. And these were, of course, very big bids. We were working on that for almost a year. And it was,
Wow.
I mean, it was huge. And that was my start.
What a massive proposal to be your very first one in your start and entry into the proposal field.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was huge. I had the luck that I was placed in a team where many of these team members had done this before in their role. So I was surrounded by experts, and it was a very motivated team. It was absolutely crazy. And at that time, of course, you had to submit everything on paper and just a couple of numbers. I still remember that very well. We applied for 2 mobile licenses, so 2 separate bids then. And every license bid had to be submitted in German and in English. Oh. So you had already 2 copies times 2 makes 4. But every license application had to be submitted in 10 copies. So we had 40 copies to submit. And now here comes the best bit. Each copy was in total 4 big binders and 2 small binders.
Oh my goodness.
So in total, it was something like 50,000 printed pages.
Oh my gosh.
And as you can imagine, in such a bid where you bid for a mobile license worth of a couple of billions, you produce the whole thing twice. So we produced 80 aluminium boxes with 6 binders in them. And that was my very first bid.
Wow. Well, that one is certainly memorable for sure. And you've been doing proposals since 1997, so I'm sure you have others that stand out in your mind. Do you have another one that you kind of...
Sure. Well, in the end of the 90s was actually the time, and I was in the telecoms practice of Arthur D. Little, and we were bidding for many mobile licenses. In total, we were bidding, when I remember well, for 22 license bids, and we won 17 out of them.
Wow.
And the second real impressive one was in Spain, actually. We were based in Barcelona, and we were working for the last 48 hours without sleeping. And then we had to transfer the whole stuff to Madrid, because the authorities were in Madrid. And to make sure that we would reach Madrid, our client, who was our who gave us the job, they arranged for a private jet, and we were transferring with that document at 1 o'clock in the night from Barcelona to Madrid in a private jet with everything you can imagine, leather seats, and it was so weird. It was absolutely weird. Unfortunately, we couldn't really enjoy it because we hadn't slept for 48 hours, and therefore we were super tired. But nevertheless, it was quite impressive.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is quite a memorable one. So you've also trained hundreds of people towards APMP certification. Do you have any, training sessions or experiences that stand out?
Not really, because they are quite, in terms of training, the APMP foundation level trainings and preparation workshops are probably the more, or the less exciting ones, let's say it positively, the less exciting ones, because you have to get across so much material in a very short time. If you look back in the pre-2015 times, the official APMP slide deck was something like, I think, 60 pages of PowerPoint, and now it's something like 120. So it has become much more than it was before, and I'm always saying it's like a PowerPoint movie a bit. And of course, the problem is most customers are not really willing to pay much more to spend twice the time, which I think would make sense, because it's not only exam preparation, it's also learning stuff that they can use every day. Of course, you can learn stuff for your daily business, but you have to go through it so quickly. So most of the foundation trainings are the less exciting ones because we can't really take customer examples. We can't work on a solution, on a story, at the flip chart, and so on. So maybe the most exciting and a negative one was one of the very first ones I did in Germany. And the problem is, of course, that the exam is in English. And one of the first groups, and at that time I wasn't really aware of the exam questions because it was my first exam with the group. And that was a group of Germans who rarely worked in an international environment. So their English was rather poor. And whoops, 2 people failed. And since then, I think I had 1 or 2 more who failed. So in the last 6 or 7 years or whatever it is. But it was in the very first one. And since then, I'm making sure that all the candidates speak proper English, or at least understand English well.
Yeah, that can be, you know, very difficult to try to take an exam if you don't understand the questions.
Yeah. And it's probably not the most simple language that that are in the exam.
Right. So before we dig a little bit more into kind of your career and some involvement with APMP, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
That's a difficult one. I've been asked this question before, and I was stumbling there as well. So I don't really know what to say here. Well, a couple of things are pretty stupid things. I mean, I'm a total chocoholic. I love drinking cold milk. It's really weird. But what else can I say about me, which is exciting? There are a couple of things that might be special. I'm a bit of a structure freak. Not necessarily in the way that my life is very structured. It's probably not. But whenever I have to deal with a problem, when I have to deal with a document, when I have to deal with a questionnaire, I start structuring immediately. And most people jump into the question or jump into the problem immediately. And I've learned, maybe that's something I've learned in consulting, to structure the problem first. And in many things I did in my life, my biggest contribution was not the solution itself, but it was providing a structure that helped understanding the problem, that helped us solving the problem, that helped communicating the issue, and so on. So I'm a bit of a structure freak.
I bet that skill set translates very well to responding to RFPs.
Yes, definitely. And by the way, that's such a funny thing. When people set up the structure for their response document, they basically define the chapters, but they don't define the structure within the chapters, which is a huge mistake because you're telling a story, and the story has to be told sequentially because we can't talk in parallel many things. So you have to add paragraphs in a sequence, and only if they are in the right order, it makes most sense. Right. And many people plan chapters, but they don't, or sections in the text, but they don't plan the structure within that section.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. And, you know, taking that next step and making those annotated outlines and really planning your sections out and planning across the volumes to make sure that everything's cohesive and that story goes throughout. You know, Absolutely. It's a step that we skip too many times, I think. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey with CSK Management.
Okay, where did it start? Let's start from the beginning. Well, probably that my brain started working for that during all these mobile license bid when I was still with Arthur D. Little. And when we had to sell our services, I tried to structure again, structure our approach, and I came up with the first Scribble. Here we are, first Scribble of what is today the BidMaster approach, and that was our approach that we started selling there. And actually, when this whole mobile license bidding period stopped at the end of the 90s, I joined IBM, and there were a couple of reasons why I didn't stay there for a long time. So first of all, I'm probably not a corporate animal, and IBM is a huge corporation, so probably I didn't fit into that. And the other thing was, I mean, I was a so-called principal. It's a kind of consulting partner role, something like that. And of course, we had to submit bids as well. And I saw how IBM did that, at least at that time. I don't know how they do it now. That's 20 years later. So I'm allowed to talk badly. And that time, I was really shocked how IBM did it at that time. They didn't have bid managers. They didn't have a bid management center. They didn't have consistent templates. They didn't have approach, nothing. They were just writing proposals somehow. And that triggered my plan. Say, hey, if such a big company like IBM, such a successful company like IBM, if they haven't got a proper bid management, there must be a potential in the market. And that's how it came, and that's how I started a year later.
Wow. So how has the organization evolved over the years?
We're still a very small company. We are a handful of people, and that has always been our approach. That we only work with people where we are absolutely convinced that these are the right partners. So we are a handful of people, and a few more freelancers we work with regularly. But we have never become a company with 50 people or so. So we're really a boutique. And I don't want to build an empire. I just don't. Of course, a couple of more people would be nice, maybe, with respect for my pension when I'm old. But I love the way we work. We are a small team, and we can choose the stuff we want to do. And that's the exciting thing. And we have always been a bit disruptive, so to speak. We were one of the first ones to provide a webinar for the certification. This year we were quite, I would say, the first ones to announce a virtual summit. And we were the first ones to translate the certification program into German, well, the slides at least. And yeah, that's basically it. Small but fine company, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in terms of how you have evolved, it seems like, being disruptors and being innovators, that's kind of how you've, evolved yourselves and kept current with, the market and the industry. So how did you learn about APMP?
Well, when I started something like, when was it, 2003 or so, I did some internet research, and I came across this strange organization, APMP, who had a terrible website. I mean, websites in general looked terrible, but that one looked very terrible. And I saw they were active in the US. They were not active at that time in continental Europe. I even think they weren't active yet in the UK at that time. Oh, wow. So I quickly forgot about APMP. Because it was just not on my radar there, because it was just not in my territory.
Right.
And then someone contacted me in 2007 whether I would be interested in joining the first board for APMP Germany, Austria, Switzerland that they wanted to build. And I immediately said, that's a great idea. And so I was part of this first team building up APMP DACH, which is for Deutschland, Austria, and Switzerland. So Germany, Austria, Switzerland. And we started with something like 18 or 20 members or so.
Wow.
And in 2008, I simply thought organizing a conference would be a good idea, because I had talked to John Williams, actually, who was the founder of the UK chapter, or one of the founders, I don't know. And so I thought maybe that's a good idea to start with a conference. And we just did something. And I still remember printing on my small black and white laser printer the conference brochures for about 80 participants.
Wow.
And it was so amateurish, but it was a big success. And since then, we have been doing that every year, basically.
Oh my goodness. And has the, chapter itself grown?
Yes, of course. Currently there are, as far as I know, something like 300 members or so. So it's a solid growth that APMP DACH has experienced. There was steep growth until I would say 250 people, and then it got a bit more flat. I think it's respectable. It's good. Still, when I look at the UK chapter, I say, we could do more. But I think looking at the UK, I believe that UK managed to get to a certain critical mass relatively early. And I guess when you have a certain size, then it's easier to recruit a large team with people who really do something. Then it's not on the shoulders of just a few. And then it's much easier. But I'm sure, and this year anyway, I mean, with Corona, you can't really grow, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite difficult, and there's been so many challenges, I think, with leadership, but they feel like all the APMP leadership has been doing a great job trying to, adjust and present these, webinars and opportunities for learning.
Absolutely.
So beyond, the local chapter, you've been an avid contributor to APMP. Do you have any memorable presentations or any memorable, BidCons that you've attended?
Oh, probably tons. If I could just think of one, well, certainly two just pop up. One was actually, I think 3 years ago, I was at the Bid Proposal Con in the US, and I just thought, I knew Dick Eason before, and I knew that he knows a hell of a lot about Word, and I think I know a hell of a lot about Word. But after that session, I said, maybe I don't know anything about Word. No, really. And these are the people you meet, or you can meet a Mike Parkinson, who is the absolute PowerPoint and graphics guru. Absolutely fascinating. Or I remember one presentation from BJ Lowney from Strategic Proposals. He was talking about the people you meet, and it was spot on. These are the people you meet. It was so exciting to hear. And I could talk about tons of cool presentations, but probably it's better to sit in directly and listen to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, all of the listeners are going to be able to resonate with, the first time they sat in a presentation by Mike Parkinson or BJ Lowney or Wordman, like you have that aha moment of like, oh my gosh, these guys are just amazing.
Right.
You mentioned a little bit about translating those foundation slides to German. And you kind of just said it, like it was simple, but it can't have been a simple task. Can you talk a little bit about, the motivation behind that, and maybe a little bit what an undertaking that was?
Yeah, I mean, the motivation was simple. I had clients who said, do you do that in German? And I said, well, I only have English slides. And the approach we have now, and so far I think we are the only ones who do that. We are showing the English slides, having a bilingual handout, and then it's the exam at the end, which is in English, and talking in German, of course, when I have German clients. So, and I also wanted to establish a common vocabulary. And the thing is, in German, I mean, if you listen to a business person in Germany speaking German, every third word is English. And interesting enough, I mean, English is the business language. And even if you talk to German people, every third word is English. I mean, you say proposal, you say bid, you say management, all these words are English.
Yeah.
And very often there is a German word, but they sound so awkward sometimes for Germans, because it's just not, it just doesn't sound cool at all. It sounds so uncool. And that for me created the need to establish a vocabulary and the basis for how to talk in both languages, and that was the basis. And simply I wanted to be able to offer a bilingual training, but it was a hell of a lot of work, I must say.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Much more difficult than I actually expected, because I thought, well, it's a couple of slides, and yeah, every slide maybe 10-15 minutes, and first of all there are quite a few slides, and then it took maybe sometimes half an hour to translate. And if you have 120 hours, you know what that means.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But I bet it's been very successful, and it sounds like, you know, your clients really do appreciate all that effort that went into it.
Well, having said that, it's a pity that we don't have a body of knowledge yet in German. Well, we kind of have these machine translation available now, but this machine translation actually generates all these awkward German words. And it might be sufficient to learn for the exam, certain things, but it's a pity that we don't have that in German, in French, in Spanish, and Japanese we have. But yes, it's a pity that we don't have that yet.
It sounds like some future initiatives for some APMP people to take on.
Well, this initiative has been going on for the last 15 years, I would say.
Oh, really?
Now maybe 10. I'm exaggerating, but 10.
Yeah, it sounds like it's, you know, quite an undertaking. And then maybe by the time that, you know, the translations are finished, things have changed or evolved.
Yes, and it's a huge effort. It's a huge effort. It takes a lot of time. It's expensive. So yeah. I understand that this is not the first priority. I do understand that.
So you have this book called The Ultimate Bid and Proposal Compendium. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and the inspiration?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've got maybe 40 or 50 books here on my bookshelf about bid and proposal management. And in all books you will find wonderful stuff. And again, and that's the structure freak in me. I wanted to structure the whole thing and bring it into one thing. And I was very impressed long time ago, and I still am impressed by the proposal guide from David Newman, Larry Newman, sorry. And it's a great book. It is, of course, a book from the US, and I wanted to do something with a bit more the international and also including the European perspective. And I wanted to structure and write it in a way so that you can read it from the very beginning to the very end, if you want to. Of course, you can go to the index and look things up. That's probably what most people do because it has 476 pages. But I wanted to bring in a structure, and that is probably the biggest achievement of this book, having structured everything into the structure that you will find in the book. Most of the content is not really rocket science, or it's not really new, but I think I have achieved, I've managed to write it in a way so that it's readable, so it doesn't sound too dull and dry, and so that you can easily understand it because it's well structured. I think that's the biggest achievement of that. I mean, I got feedback from people who said, well, there's nothing new in it. No, there isn't. The structure is new. The content is not new at all, but the structure is new and the style is new.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that really does help, especially for those who need more than just a quick reference guide. Being able to kind of start from the beginning and understand the process from the start to the end, having that readability and that comprehension really does help.
Absolutely. And actually writing such a book was a huge experience Of course, it was a lot of work, and actually I could verify the APMP numbers that you find in the body of knowledge, that it takes about 4 to 8 pages for writing new stuff. That's absolutely true. My average was 5.
Okay.
So I could verify that. And the interesting thing for me was, I mean, very often when you know a topic very well, you think you know it, and then you can just write it down. But when you start writing it down, you start thinking, well, does that apply to governmental organizations as well? Oh no, I need to distinguish. And then you think, oh, does that apply for grant writing as well? Oh no, I need to distinguish. And you start getting more and more inputs that you need to structure. And it helped me getting into the topic even more, although I thought, oh, I know quite a bit. But it helped me exploring the whole bid and proposal management even further. It was an extremely nice experience. And the other thing was funny, since I've always been very interested in language, and my mother was German, and the original book was written in German. I guess I can proudly say that I'm very good in German, and I can write very well. But then I gave it to an editor. Oh my God. There is so many things coming back. Oh, this is not quite correct. This is not quite correct. This is what is called a Helvetism, something that only the Swiss say, so you can't say that in German. And many, many, many things that you just don't see when you write. So the added value of an editor, wow, that was really great.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And, you know, even in proposals, when you have that outside editor come in with that fresh perspective, definitely a value add. So you mentioned also, you know, being, you know, an innovator, and one of the things that you guys have organized is this virtual bid and proposal summit scheduled for September. It's a 3-day virtual conference, and wow, what an effort that has to be. Can you share, you know, how did you come up with this idea, and maybe some of the behind the scenes and some of the inspirations?
There were many things coming together, actually. I've always wanted to do something virtual, because we had already organized in the past a conference in Switzerland, because I mean, for the German-speaking chapter, people had to travel from one country to the other. And so we said, well, let's organize a Swiss conference. We did that a couple of times successfully. And I always had the dream to do something more international and so on. And obviously virtual would have been one thing. But we never had a concrete idea how that could be done. Yeah. And then accidentally, one of my clients told me about the platform that we are using now. And I had a look at the website, and I was fascinated what you can do with such a platform. And so you can build a lobby, you can build an exhibition hall, you can build a networking lounge. You have virtual booths, and people can visit the booths, and people can talk to the exhibitors. It's really exciting.
Oh, wow.
And so I learned that tool, and that was about the time when Corona broke out. And we then heard that probably the German-speaking conference would be cancelled. So we thought, oh, okay, let's make a German conference. And then suddenly we thought, why should we limit that to the German-speaking market? Why should we limit that? So we came up with the idea of a global conference, and that's how it evolved. And then we announced it, and so far we have received great feedback, and registrations are coming in very well. So we are absolutely excited about it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so great. And the timing just seems to have worked out really well, you know, particularly with, you know, how things are going with the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great transition over to kind of our more lighthearted surprise rapid fire questions round. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about, you know, your chocoholism.
mean, the Swiss are, as far as I know, really the world champions in eating chocolate. I think the average Swiss eats about 12 kilos a year, something like that.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So, but I'm sure that I'm increasing the average. I'm just addicted to that stuff. I just can't stop, and I love it. And for those people who have met me at the bid and proposal cons in the US, I think 3 times we ran a little bid and proposal quiz, and the winning team got a 4.5 kilo Toblerone chocolate. So I was walking around with that monster chocolate, and some people might remember that, Mr. Chocolate.
Definitely memorable.
Do you remember the very first chocolate you had when you were young?
No.
Or...
no chance. Must have been at the age of 2 or something. I don't know. I really don't know.
Or
yeah, prior to my memory, actually. I remember one thing when I was in the army, and the Swiss have to go to the army, that's mandatory. And we did, a big exercise, and we were all exhausted, and for some reason the kitchen wasn't ready yet. And I got this 400-gram chocolate bar, which I then immediately ate within half an hour or so. And then I ate another 400-gram bar of chocolate. And then I didn't eat anything for 2 days. Oh, no.
Wow,
it's silly looking back.
No, Chris, if I had a chocolate in front of me, I don't think I would stop myself. But, you're so blessed to be born in Switzerland, and guess what's amazing. So you mentioned that the average, Swiss ate 12 kilogram. And what was your average, Chris, on a daily basis, provided you have unlimited supply? How much can
average,
you eat?
I don't know. I've got my phases and waves. Sometimes I eat 100 or 200 grams a day, and sometimes I eat nothing. I can't really tell.
It looks like it's an everyday thing if you get a choice.
Yes.
That's brilliant, Chris. And Chris, as an outsider, there are listeners from so many countries. Chris, what Swiss chocolates do you recommend?
Well, actually, that's the funny thing. I mean, the Belgians claim that they have the best chocolates as well. And my point of view is that the Swiss have the best chocolate and the Belgians have the best chocolates. So when it comes to, I think it's called pralines, something like that.
Yeah.
Those in a box, nicely wrapped in small pieces and so on. The Belgian chocolates are wonderful. But when it comes to chocolate in terms of, bars, classic bars, then I think the Swiss are very good. It depends on your personal preference, of course, but and then there's some chains who make what they call fresh chocolate. So it's not even wrapped up; it's just chocolate they sell. And when you want something, they cut it and then put it in a little bag for you. Wow. And then it's the personal taste. The funny thing is, I don't know whether you have heard of this ruby chocolate, the red chocolate now. There were 2 types of chocolates, or chocolate. There was the milk chocolate or the dark chocolate, which is basically a variation of the same thing. And there was the white chocolate. And now there's ruby, which is kind of a reddish, fruity chocolate. I still prefer milk chocolate, but it's something innovative at least.
Got you. Can you cook or make chocolates at home?
No. It's probably, I don't know anyone who does that, because you need to, or I don't know the English word for that. You need to basically, how do you say that? Stir it for a very long time. Yes. So in a good chocolate factory, these machines, it comes from the French gancher, I think it's the French word, I'm not sure. They have it moving, the chocolate cream, or however you call the stuff, is moving for 24 hours and more. So that's not really something you can do at home.
That's nice. And when you were young, Chris, what was your favorite toy?
What was my favorite toy? Oh, I loved the Rubik's Cube. I loved it. I think it came out when I was, I think 10 or 11, something like that. And I mean, at that time, you couldn't look up in the internet how it works. So there were some secret lists going around how to do it. And finally, I managed to get one of them. And then I played with that Rubik's Cube for days, I would say, till I managed. And of course, I was doing it against the time. And my record at that time was, I think, 28 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Which is quite good. But when you look at it, the world record is something like 3 seconds now. It's amazing. But Rubik's Cube is definitely one of my favorite toys in my childhood.
Looks like the structure part of you was developed.
Maybe, yes. Maybe. And Lego, of course. I was a big Lego fan.
I can imagine. Now I'm slightly concerned. My youngest is always in his Lego. But hopefully he'll come out as a very strong proposal person at some point, like you, Chris. Fingers crossed. So let's see. Chris, what music do you listen to when you have free time?
I have one particular musician that I very much like, and everyone looks at me when I say that. Are you nuts? It's Jean-Michel Jarre. It's a French synthesizer artist.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the synthesizer pioneers. And so it's pure synthesizer music, very spacey kind of. I very often listen to that. I love it. And he makes, well, outside Corona times, but he used to make fantastic concerts. For instance, he had a concert at the 14 Juillet, so 14th of July, the French National Day, at the Champ de Mars, at the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. And 1.3 million people were attending live. So he's the master of these big, huge concerts. And I love that stuff. I mean, you can see a line here. It's consistent. I mean, it's that electronic stuff, electronic music and electronic gimmicks, Sony and so on. So there's a certain consistency in there.
Got you. What was the first technology gadget that you bought for yourself?
Oh, probably a pocket calculator. But in the early 90s, I had every half a year a new mobile phone at that time. And the funny thing is, they got smaller every time, and now they get bigger every time. It's really funny. And I've got a huge hi-fi equipment at home. I've got every imaginable gimmick for my computer here, like great microphone and huge screen and all these kinds of things. It's probably the boy in me. You know, what are people saying? The difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. And that's definitely true for me.
That's brilliant. And what's the expensive toy that you ever broke?
Maybe that was a computer display, a big one that I managed to push off the edge, and then it fell down and was broken.
Oh.
It was quite expensive.
That's great. I know you are an avid reader yourself, Chris. What are your favorite books?
My favorite books is The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, no.
I've read it twice. I loved it, and I've read it twice before the movie came out. It's by far my favorite book. And the funny thing is, most people say, oh, then you like Harry Potter. No, I don't think so. Because Harry Potter for me is written for children primarily, whereas The Lord of the Rings was written for adults. Of course, both is somehow, what is it called? Fiction. But for me, it's quite different. I love Lord of the Rings, and I never got the taste for Harry Potter, for instance.
Yeah. And have you spoken to Bruce Farrell?
I haven't, no.
I
know who he is, but I haven't spoken to him yet.
Bruce is also, his favorite book was Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any specific character in Lord of the Rings that you really like?
Yes. What was his name? Aragorn?
Aragorn, yeah.
I liked him. And of course, Gandalf, of course.
That's nice. So what movie or a book character are you most similar to?
Oh, movie character. Well, there are of course a lot of movie characters. I would like to be like them, but I'm not. You know,
Maybe we'll spin the story. What movie character would you like to be?
sure. I mean, all these heroes. I mean, like what is it? The movie? I mean, Top Gun. Tom Cruise in Top Gun is a cool guy. I mean, it's a childhood dream. Now, I wanted to become a fighter pilot. It didn't work out, but I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That would have been cool.
That's nice. That's great. That's great. And what are your favorite foods? You know, the top 3 food that you will be happily eating every single day.
Definitely sushi is one of them. I love sushi. I love fondue as a Swiss, and I love raclette as a Swiss. So a lot of melted cheese. These are certainly my favorite dishes. Yeah.
And I'm sure chocolate is a granted thing. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although I wouldn't call that my favorite food. It's an addiction. It's not food.
So what's the one food that you never bring yourself to eat? Anything particular that you dislike?
Oh, all these kinds of things, like insects and oh, no, thank you. But although I'm sure if you have grown up with things like that, it's absolutely normal. I mean, to be honest, we eat honey, and when you think actually what honey is, it's not only from the flowers, but it's an insect that collects it and mixes it with some dribble, and I don't know, but we are grown up with it, and that's why we love it. So I'm sure that has something to do with how you're grown up, but I cannot imagine eating insects.
Got you. What's one personal trait you really like about yourself?
I think I'm a very versatile person, so I guess I have always things to talk about, maybe except for football, but everything else, I can talk about cars, I can talk about science, I love talking about politics, I love talking about business, I love talking about books. I think I'm a very versatile person, and I'm enjoying being very versatile.
That's beautiful. That's nice. And what's the best compliment you have ever received?
Actually, I'm, what is it called in English? Is it Protestant? No. But I have left the church. Can I say it this way? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I have a very good friend who is very religious. And he said, although you're not in a church, he told me, he said, you are a true Christian. And that was, for me, hearing it from him was really a wonderful compliment, I must say. Because I truly believe in the values of the Christian religion, but I'm not a religious person. That's why I didn't stay with the church.
Yes, I think that's well said, Chris. Well said. I think whatever you do, your values and ethos comes up very strong. So true. So, Chris, if we could change one thing about how the human body has evolved, what would we change?
All human creatures, or the whole human society, should learn to listen more. And I think if people were listening more what the others have to say, they would do so much better. And while I'm saying that, I don't even think I'm a very good listener, to be honest. But I'm recognizing that listening is a wonderful, wonderful skill. I know a couple of people, when you interact with them, they ask you questions, they ask the right questions, and it's so exciting being with them because they are so good listeners. I think the whole human society should more listen to each other in any respect.
Well said, Chris. Well said, especially now in these testing times, 100%. Chris, if you can take 5 things to a deserted island, what would you take with you?
Chocolate, 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 and chocolate. No, seriously. I'm just thinking whether I would take my mobile phone with me or not. Probably I couldn't recharge it, but because the mobile phone is a great invention, but it's a pain as well. Now, probably I would take a couple of books. Probably, I mean, that's not a thing, but I would take my best friends with me, my family. I think I would focus more on people rather than things.
Yes, got you. And who haven't you seen or talked to in a long time and you hope that they are doing okay?
Quite a few people, actually. Well, I guess I'm quite communicative and I'm talking to many people, and I would love to meet so many people again. That's, by the way, one of the reasons why I love going to conferences like APMP conferences, because I meet people again and I can talk to them that I haven't seen for a while. But to just name, that's probably difficult. But maybe in a more generic answer, everyone I haven't seen for longer than a year, I would love to talk to him or her again.
Yeah, that's nice. So if you could visit any place in the world, where would you choose to go and why?
Just out of curiosity, I would actually love to go to the desert you just mentioned. I've never been to a real desert. I would like to see that. I mean, I've been to many cities. I've been to many places around the world. I mean, there are many white spots on my map still, but I've never been to a real desert. I was backpacking quite a lot when I was young, and I would actually love doing that again in a very deserted place. That would be something I would love doing.
Nice.
But it doesn't really matter where it is, because you always find interesting people. As soon as you talk to them, doesn't really matter.
Perfect. And from your backpacking days, or even after that, travel-wise, do you have any favorite places?
The greatest trip I had was across Australia. I was traveling through Australia. That was really exciting. However, I was also traveling through the US when I was young. I had one of these standby passes. That was really funny. I think that was $800 or something. And I could jump on any Delta plane as long as there was a free seat. So I was always on standby. So I was really getting to Atlanta, and then I was looking at, where could I go? I was looking at the big board and said, there's a flight in half an hour to New York. And then I was asking, no, it's complete. Okay, so what can I do? San Francisco. That sounds cool. Yeah, let's go to San Francisco.
Wow.
That was really, really fun.
Wow.
So that was also the America is a wonderful country to travel. Absolutely. Absolutely.
My God, you're a proper adventurer, Chris. It's amazing. I normally ask people, what's the most courageous thing you have ever done, Chris? Is there anything else, Chris, that you have done that's courageous?
Well, I once jumped off the Valvatsaska Dam. You might know the James Bond movie.
Yes.
I think, what was it called? Where Pierce Brosnan jumps off the dam.
Yes.
I did exactly that bungee jump.
My God, I think while you were
that's
talking,
about 200 meters, and it's really frightening.
My God, that's unbelievable. That's good for Chris. And who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Certainly my parents, of course. I'm happy that I still have great parents. Then in business, of course, I had a couple of managers that were really, really promoting me or helping me to develop my career. When I look back to my youth, I was a Boy Scout, and I had some people there that I met that probably influenced me quite a bit. Yes, and of course my family influences me a lot. I mean, I've got 3 boys at home. That's very lively. They influence me every day. But in the way you asked it, it's certainly a couple of managers I had. It's certainly my parents, and I think usually when you look at idols or something, typically you can learn 1 or 2 things from someone, and you can learn 2 other things from someone else. I don't think it helps if you just want to copy someone. I think that doesn't help. But if you take what you believe is something you want to learn from this person and you want to learn something else from another person, I think then you can learn and evolve most.
Wow, well said, Chris, well said. And 3 boys, Chris, how are you coping in this isolation? 3 boys at home full time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're going to school. They're back to school now. Thanks God. It's just nerve-wracking. It's fantastic to have them at home and to do homework with them. But it was nerve-wracking, I must say.
I can imagine. So,
and I don't think I coped with it better than others. It was just a special experience.
I can imagine. So how old are they?
I've got twins. They are 8, and the elder one is 11.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. That's nice. So how strict are you as a parent if in the count between 1 to 10?
I would say 6 or 7.
Oh, okay. That's great. Okay, I might get some parenting tips from you offline, Chris. But
no,
okay.
I guess there are certain things where I'm very strict, and some other things where I should be much more strict.
Perfect.
I think, but that applies to most parents, I guess.
I think so, Chris, definitely. So who's the kindest person you know?
The kindest person I know. Apart from my family, there was one person I met long time ago. He was a good friend of mine. For somehow our ways are not the same anymore. He has moved. He was just a fantastic friend, and the kindest person I know is a good friend of mine that I know since I am 20. I know him from my army times. He's just a fantastic person. He's really the kind of person that you could call in the middle of the night, and he would listen.
Definitely, Chris. I've loved that you had friends like that. So, Chris, last question from me. As you know that we are in COVID crisis now, or COVID time. So what have you observed lately that reminded you that people are good and kind?
I guess I'm a realist, and I wouldn't say that generally everyone is good, but everyone has something good, has a good part. And some people have a bigger good part, and some people have a smaller part that is good. But I think in times like this, you recognize better who is actually good and who is not so good. And I'm hearing that from people. I know people who lived in the eastern part of Germany, and they all said the same thing. It was a terrible regime there before '89, but people were more kind to each other because they had to, because times were difficult. So I think that's one of the good things of this pandemic, that people help each other more than they did before.
Nice, Chris. Well said.
All right, Chris, it's been so great hearing a little bit more about your life and your career and some of the influences that you've had. Over the years, I'm sure you've been given lots of advice. What's the best piece of advice that you've received, and who gave it to you?
That's a very easy answer. As I mentioned before, I did the officer school in the Swiss Army. And when I was once I was complaining, and then we had a kind of one-to-one session with the colonel, the commander of that school. And I remember very well that I was complaining about one of the teachers there. And he said, you know, you have to work with what you have.
Mm.
And I think that's something that many people should learn, that they have to work with what they have. I mean, of course, you can always try to improve and so on, but sometimes you have what you have, and you have a group of people, you have a team, and not everyone is an outperformer in that team. And you have people who have a different life, and they're not so interested in high performance maybe, and then you have to deal with them. And that is probably one of these sentences that I hear again and again in my head. You have to work with what you have, or you have to work with whom you have.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, that definitely applies in the world of proposals. You're going to have those varied motivations and skill sets. And sort of on a similar note, you mentioned earlier a few minutes ago about how you shouldn't try to copy someone, right? You can maybe learn a few things from different people. And really that's how you grow yourself as a professional. So is there any other advice you would give to, you know, some of those younger bid and proposal professionals looking to have a successful career?
Definitely. I think the biggest problem that our industry has, or the bid and proposal world has, is that there's a big gap between common practice and best practice. And many people, when they see that everyone does it this way, they think that's how you do it, and therefore it's best practice. And there are so many aspects of bid and proposal management that are definitely not best practice. I mean, think of the proposal presentation, a movie of dull bullet point slides. That's definitely not best practice, but it's common practice. Or think before you ink. I mean, how many people start just writing once they have seen the question? They don't even think of what the key message could be, what the value is, what the customer wants to hear. They just write, they copy and paste. Or it's common practice that you start, if you're free to structure your document, it's a common practice to start with "about us." I mean, that's not customer orientation if you start talking about yourself.
Right.
It's clearly not best practice, but people think it's best practice and act like that because everyone does it, or everyone has been doing that for the last 200 years. And I think for young professionals, it's important to understand what is common practice. Everyone does it this way, but maybe I could do it better, as opposed to really best practice things that you could do better. And that's the thing about bid and proposal management. I mean, if you look at so many things in corporate life, I mean, you have average people. The average of one large corporation is on the same level as the average person in another large corporation, and the quality of the processes is about the same. The level of technologies they use is the same. I mean, basically, the statistics of large numbers applies fully. I mean, corporate organizations are somehow by definition average, and for many things they do, that's absolutely fine. If you have an average process, a typical process, that's fine. But the problem with bid writing is, of course, that if your bid or proposal is average, you don't win. So that's something where you shouldn't be average. And so many organizations treat bid and proposal management like anything else in the organization. And they could do so much better by thinking of, okay, what can I really do better? Instead of, okay, how it's done everywhere else.
Right. Such a great point. And I really love the way that you compared, you know, best practice to common practice. And I think resonates with everybody, you know, so great advice. So my final question for you, Chris, is what's next for you? What are you looking forward to in the future?
Well, in the very short term, we are working full steam ahead on our bid and proposal summit. That is a lot of work, as you mentioned it before. That's the short-term thing that we are working on. We are also working on on different forms of how we could structure the whole bid and proposal knowledge in a different way. There's nothing super new at the moment, but yeah, at the very moment, it's probably the Bid and Proposal Summit that we are focusing on because we haven't done it before. And yeah, that's where our attention is and our energy is at the very moment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's such an undertaking. So that has to be where most of your focus currently is.
Oh, Chris, is there anything else that you would like to share, Chris, or is there any part of your life or career that we haven't touched that we could maybe revisit in the last 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah, maybe one thing. The importance of bid and proposal management, that's kind of my mission throughout my bid and proposal career. If you look at the perfect bid manager, let's say, or the perfect proposal manager, a perfect proposal manager or bid manager would be someone who is great in project management because he has a very hard deadline. He's someone who is a good leader because he has a team of people who are not directly reporting to him. They have different priorities. Then you should be knowledgeable about the product or service that you are selling. Then you should be a salesperson because at the end it's a part of the sales process and you should be selling in the document. Then you should be someone who's very good at in using Office products, Word, PowerPoint, and so on. Then you should be brilliant in writing stuff or reviewing stuff. If you put that all that together, I mean, nothing of that is rocket science. But the combination of all these skills, that is a thing. And I think that's still, we are far away from getting the recognition from top managements and the entire community in the business world that we should get, because a good proposal manager is a super project manager, is a super writer, is a super leader, is a super Word and PowerPoint user, is a super late at night worker, and so on. And the recognition that bid and proposal managers deserve, we don't have that yet.
Well said, Chris. Super powerful final words there, Chris. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk, Chris. Thank you so much for your time today. Wish you, your colleagues at CSK, all your DACH members, family, friends, everybody, all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire bid and proposal industry colleagues and everybody around you. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay kind, Chris. Thank you so much.
It has been my pleasure.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.